now let's get ready for the next Fireside Chat, and it is Latinas Creating Jobs and Sustainable Futures, hosted by Known Holdings. As you know, Latinas are one of the fastest growing groups of entrepreneurs in the United States. We are creating businesses, jobs, and opportunities, including in those that aim to help address climate and other sustainability measures. So let's hear from two Latina founders who are building businesses that will lead to brighter, more sustainable future. And here to moderate the chat is a business builder herself, a visionary leader, a sales and marketing maven, savvy media executive, and Raizado Festival and National Advisory Committee member, Monique Manso. You're so welcome.
Bueno, sí.
Everyone, how's the energy? I'm going to ask it one more time. How's the energy? Ahora sí, ahora sí. Okay, well, it is my pleasure to announce two powerhouses that we have with us here today, as if you haven't seen enough powerhouses already, but we're just going to add to the Latina powerhouse entrepreneur side of the house today. And first I'm going to introduce Mariana Borelli. Mariana, come on up while we introduce you. She is co-founder of Amai, which launched in 2019. She is originally from Venezuela. She pursued her passion in the arts since the age of 16, started her own theater company, continues to act, most recently on Disney stories, Ultraviolet and Black Scorpion, but today she's here to talk to us about her beauty business, Amai. So welcome, Mariana, please. Also joining us today for this conversation is Kayla Castañeda, CEO and founder of Agua Bonita. If you haven't already had it, I encourage you during the break, when you have a second, to go out and have some of those beautiful flavors that she has out there. She is the descendant of migrant laborers in California. She's a former manager at Coca-Cola. I think we have some Coca-Cola folks in the audience. And she shaped her business really in the image of her heritage. And I think, you know, when you pop open a can, see the beautiful imagery on the outside and have a sip, there's no doubt of what's behind the product. So welcome, ladies. Happy to have you here today. I personally have spent a tremendous amount of time studying, Latina entrepreneurs, what motivates them, what their challenges are, opportunities, and a lot of, how they got to where they are today. And I'm really proud, to say that Latinas are on the forefront of small businesses and of entrepreneurship and opening up businesses at about 6 times, a greater rate than non-Hispanic Caucasian women. I think it's going to be really interesting to follow this trend. We saw this trend years ago with Black women, African-American women in the US, and they were really doing it as a means of getting out of corporate America, where they just couldn't deal anymore, with both the conscious and unconscious bias and that feeling of not belonging. In the research that I've personally done, I've seen Latina women start these businesses as side hustles, right? So they didn't want to give up the regular corporate job, and then on the side, they started these businesses. Many have left those corporate jobs and continued the side hustle, and some continue to keep it that way. But I think it'll be interesting to see over time, given what's happening in corporate American industries around the country, whether or not that continues to be the trend. So my first question is probably an obvious one, which is, what was the catalyst for you all to start, this business? Because you each worked in either similar industries to where you started your business or very different industries. And so I'd love to know what motivated you. So would you like to start, Kayla?
Sure. So really, I had this moment, and we joke a lot about when life gives you lemons, make aguas frescas, because I had this coming to God moment, really. So I grew up in Central California. My family is migrant farm workers. My grandpa was a migrant farm worker. That's really how we ended up in Central California. And so we were able to see firsthand just all the wasted produce that comes up every year just for it not being aesthetically pleasing. And so my grandpa, a true Latino, could not let anything go to waste and would bring home this fruit from the fields and make aguas frescas for us. And so when I was working in corporate America, I was working for Coca-Cola and really loved that and learned the business of beverage, I would say. But I also realized that it's such a huge corporation that if I ever wanted to see my ideas come to life, that it was probably gonna be a few decades before I would have that opportunity. And so I left Coke and I started consulting for small food and beverage startups and really helping them with what I had learned to get their businesses off the ground. That's also where I realized that many startup founders do not have it all together and they are building the plane as you're flying it. And so when the pandemic rolled around, my largest client, their model was direct to offices, and we all know that when the pandemic came, all the offices closed. And so pretty quickly, I found myself without any work, and my mother-in-law was home from Mexico and making us aguas frescas every day. And I just thought, wow, why am I not doing this? This has been around my family since I was born, and it's not out on the market, and I have all this great corporate expertise and all this great startup expertise, and this really checks the boxes for something that I want to create that's culturally reflective of myself, of my community, of my family, and that consumers would want. And Agua Bonita was born mid-pandemic.
Love it. Yeah, congratulations. Mariana?
Well, first of all, I'm really excited to be here, so thank you. Thank you, Monica, and thanks the festival, everybody, because it's really an honor to be here. It's funny because I feel like all these businesses normally are born out of a crisis. It's funny that you were saying in the middle of the pandemic. Not that becoming a mom is a crisis of any kind. Well, it may be for some of us, but that's not the point. But I moved to LA. I was living in Mexico and I was acting constantly. I was booking job after job. And then I moved to LA. And the acting business, you know, the industry is a really strange one. You can't really go out and try to find a job. You have to wait for your agent or your manager to call you to have an audition. And coming from this train of working, I moved to LA, and my manager said, you have to wait and see. And I was like, what? Wait and what? No. And I became pregnant, and we were very, very happy. But at the same time, I was like, of course, if it was hard to get a job, you know, non-pregnant, now it was even more complicated. So me and my friend Aislinn Derbez, who is also one of the founders of Amai, she was in the middle of postpartum, going through a really hard time. And I was just found out that I was pregnant, not getting any jobs either. And I said, listen, I am really worried about the amount of plastic that there is. Sustainability has been one of my first things, one of my favorite, and I'm quite obsessive about it. And I said, do you have any sort of like shampoo or conditioner without plastic? Do you know of a brand that you could recommend to me? And she was like, no, I have no idea. So we went on a quest to search for shampoos and conditioners that would work. And they came, you know, in the solid form. And we did, and we couldn't find anything. And then we said, well, what if we make them? And then, just like you said, we had no idea. I had no expertise of anything. I had a really strong desire to create a product out there and to put an offer out there without plastic. Because the amount of single-use plastic that we throw away, it is unbelievable, it's insane, and it is dangerous what we're doing to our planet right now. So that's how I was born. We found a group of women in Mexico who, after a long time of selecting, created the products that we dreamt of at some point. Shampoos and conditioners and body creams and body soaps that work, that leave your hair beautiful, soft, and that also once you finish the product, there's no waste. Every bar is wrapped in rice paper that is 100% compostable and is printed with mineral ink that is also compostable. So that's how Amai was born.
It's a great story. Thank you. Yes, thank you. You touched upon sustainability before I even got to that, and that's wonderful because it is something that I wanted to talk about today. Oftentimes Latinos in general are not thought of as being on the forefront of sustainability and caring for the earth. And here we have two of you. I'm going to turn this over to you, Kayla, for a second to talk a little bit about what it is that you do with your business, to ensure the sustainability of the business itself, of the earth. And I know that you're very supportive of migrant workers, but again, it's an industry where when you think of carbonated beverages and you think of the packaging of them. So I would love to know a little bit about how you're handling that. And then I would say that the second part of that question is, how are you guys spreading that word? Is it through your promotions and advertising? Is it through grassroots education? I'd love to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so sustainability is really built into the fabric of our company and our product. So we make aguas frescas very true to tradition. They are non-carbonated, but ours are in cans. So that's a common misconception that ours may be carbonated, but that was a very intentional choice for us because aluminum is infinitely recyclable. So even though we're non-carbonated, we still are in aluminum cans because we have that sustainability mind to the creation of our products. We also use rescued produce, the produce that I was talking about that we see firsthand. So we use up to like 30 to 50% juice in our products, which is 5 to 10 times the industry standard in a lot of like enhanced water products. And we are part of what's called the upcycling movement. If you go into like Whole Foods and things like that, you'll see a lot of upcycled foods. But I get a little fired up about this because we're not doing anything different than our ancestors have always done. They're just not letting anything go to waste. And so we are stepping in before that produce gets a chance to end up in landfill and putting good use to it. So that was a little bit of the inspiration behind our name, Agua Bonita, is we're taking this ugly produce and giving it a beautiful new life. So we also, like you mentioned, have a give back program. We donate to Justice for Migrant Women. So a purchase of our products helps with our annual donation to the nonprofit. And for us, it's just a way to make things that start in the fields and start with the people that work in the fields and make sure that it ends up there too. And that we do no harm so that you can reach for Agua Bonita and know that not only does it taste good and is good for you, but it's good for people and good for the planet as well, because we really should be leaving this world the same way, if not better, than the way that we came into it.
Wonderful.
And for us, it's basically sort of re-educating ourselves, first of all, and seeing the possibility of creating products that didn't need to be put in plastic. And a lot of the work that we've done is kind of inviting people to try it, right? Because when we see something in a bar, we assume it's a soap. Mm-hmm. And so they say like, oh, I love your soaps. And it's like, well, we hardly sell any soaps, actually. It's mostly shampoos and conditioners. So it's kind of like reprogramming almost the minds of people who want to try and are willing to try. And so all of our products are not only good for the environment and very harmless to the environment, but also they're socially very responsible. Our products are made mostly by women. In our workshop, there's only women, most of them single mothers, working in Mexico, in Querétaro. And all of Amay, like the fabric of Amay, is made by women. We're like around a total of 15, 16 women. And not because by choice, it just happens that women, and these are kind of proven in studies that have been done in several places in the planet, that women have a tendency to caring for the environment more than men. And that's why I think the whole gender topic and the social equality and diversity is so intrinsically linked with the whole sustainable and climate crisis. So going back to the answer, our packages are made out of rice paper. Like I said before, we created all the bars are shaped in triangles. So the idea was that we could fit the most amount of bars in a box. So how do we do, because we didn't want to use any sort of like filled, like bubble wrap and none of that. So it was a big challenge how to create those. So we launched in 2019 with our new moon, and there were 4 bars: shampoo, conditioner, body soap, and body cream. And so they're positioned in a way that they form a square, and they're tightly kind of like put together and in a box that has absolutely nothing else but the bars. So I was a lot of thinking. So our boxes are 100% biodegradable. The ink that we use in the boxes is also comes from vegetable ink, and the rice paper. And so we've made a conscious choice never to use plastic in any part of the way. Not even when we had to use DHL, that was a shipping company, we begged them, please do not wrap them in that little plastic bag. And it was hard, because it's hard to change your ways. If you've done something for a long enough amount of time, it's hard to conceive that with a different, form. So it's been challenging, but I think slowly but surely people are becoming much more familiar with the idea of a sustainable business.
Well, kudos to you on how well thought out that really has been, because it's taken a lot of planning and effort to try and, make sure that you are doing things in a much more green and eco-friendly way.
I just wanted to add one
please.
thing onto that too. You had asked, how are we educating the public? Gen Z gets it. So that's just one of those things, Gen Z gets it, and that is the future. And if you look, 1 in 4 Latinos is Gen Z right now. So I think that it alleviates the burden on us a little bit for that consumer education, because the next generation gets it, and everyone else really needs to kind of get with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Mariana, you spoke about women and, sort of their impact in the making of the product, in the packaging of the product, and leading on the forefront. I'm going to take the conversation in a completely different direction as it relates to beauty for 1 second. And that is about the beauty business as a whole, right? And what is deemed traditional beauty. And this is, again, something that I've spent a lot of time on and devoted a lot of time to, what the norms are around beauty, tending to be more of what is the norm in non-Hispanic, Caucasian, white culture, right? And although I know Amai is not a color cosmetics, company, hair care, you're up there with, the big, the L'Oreals of the world, the Estee Lauders of the world, et cetera. And so I would love to get your take, the company's take, Amai's vision, for redefining beauty, what is beautiful as it relates to Latina women.
Yeah, I think from Amai and from a very personal perspective, I think we've had in the past 10 and I would say 15 years to redefine what beautiful is. And that beautiful is nothing more than a personal idea of what you want to be or what you strive to be, not only physically but emotionally and, socially. So Amai supports 100% the idea that beauty is a unique thing, and that idea of creating one idea of beauty. This is what beauty looks like. It's something that we don't really support. Especially because as Latinos, we come in every color, in every shape, and in every size. We're tall, we're short, we're light, we're dark, and it's all us. So I think one of the hardest cultures to pigeonhole into a concept of what beauty is us. And one of the hardest things for me in the United States has been always kind of saying, oh, yeah, I am Latina. I am 100% Latina, you know? And almost trying to break down my ethnicity. But really, are you? And I'm like, yes, I am Latina. So I think the beauty that comes with the variety and the diversity within our own culture is something that we celebrate in AMAI and we support. And I think things are changing. I think the idea of one beautiful face is kind of moving aside to welcome an idea of a multiple, a unique.
I agree, and I think it's very brave and bold to, put a stake in the ground when it comes to hair because, of all the areas of beauty where there is the most controversy and quite frankly, and I say this with sadness, pain, for Latina women is in hair. It's their crown. But at the, interview any Latina woman with curly hair, and Kayla's wearing her locks proudly today, and they look beautiful, and they'll have some story about the pain of their hair and, wearing it in its natural form. So I think, again, I celebrate you for, putting a stake in the ground in that space in particular. And I think distribution of these products is critical, right? And so in a former life, I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with brick and mortar retailers, the Targets of the world, the Kohl's of the world, et cetera, Walmarts. And there was always a discussion around the ethnic product aisle and how much or how little exists in those aisles, right? And how painstaking that is in the beauty category in particular for women to go in and be looking because, in the beauty category, Latina women are like their own little chemists, right? They're mixing things up and adding oils and scents to everything. But I'm gonna bring that discussion around brick and mortar and retail distribution full circle to you, Kayla, with beverage, because that's another, place where food is another place, right? And yesterday, I don't know if anybody in the room was at the book reading, but we were talking about all the things that we can do as responsible, community members, leaders, to help with the publishing industry. And one of the things was demand, right? And I talked about like how I make it my mission to drive the Fresh Direct people crazy in New York every week asking for Latino products. When I put in my order, whether it's yuca or culantro or whatever it is I'm looking for that week, and not having to go to 3 different stops. And so I'd love to hear from you what, your experience is with distribution from an ethnic, food or beverage, brand. And it, for many, there is this concept or this conception that becoming mainstream is the dream, right? And I don't know, is it? I'd love to hear what your experience has been.
Yeah, I mean, my experience has been a little bit of a mixed bag because there are definitely those distributors and stores that are kind of like, oh, well, we already have a Mexican product. And, and it's like, okay, but that's tepache, and we make aguas frescas, and it's super different from one another. And having that educational moment with them can be very painstaking and brutal. But then there are really great partners. We have Target as a really great partner who I think has made a lot of advances in integrating cultural items, but also celebrating them. And so I would say, is it the dream to go mainstream? Yes, in that I don't think that an ethnic aisle should really exist because these should be things that are just found on every shelf everywhere. So I would say, yeah, the dream is to go mainstream in that these really shouldn't be pigeonholed or inhibited by these standards that are archaic and just outdated.
So how can we help you, right, both of you? How can we help you when it comes to distribution? Because my promise, to Monica and the team here was that anything that we talk about, we will come up with, a to-do list, right? What does everybody here who is a thought leader need to carry forward leaving this room today? So as it relates to, let's start with distribution and making sure that you all are heard, what can we do to help you given the experiences that you've had?
Yeah, I think what you do with Fresh Direct, bugging your local stores and requesting us is always very, very helpful. I would say even following us on social media and amplifying our voices, because large retailers do look at things like that, and brands that have a big presence tend to get a little bit more attention. But really making sure that we are invited into the spaces that you already exist. So whether that's your work potluck, hitting us up and saying, oh, can we have agua bonita there? Or if it's your local coffee shop, telling the owners like, hey, I actually found this really great drink. You guys should look into it. I think little things like that where you guys already exist, just bringing us along for the ride is very helpful.
I agree. I think word of mouth is a huge one. And social media is a huge one, but especially, and one of the things that has worked for us really well is that if you go to your local store, we are in many sustainable stores in Mexico. Like, we're not yet in the big stores. At some point we were in Sephora for a while, competing with the big ones. Amaya was the first solid brand that ever got to Sephora Mexico ever. So it was a big thing, it was a big step, and we made a special sort of collection for them. But one of the things that really help is that if you go to the store where you buy your sustainable products, like I have a store in LA where I buy things with bulk, so I don't buy any plastic, so I buy all my rice, all my da-da-da. And if you go to those stores and say, hey, you should have Amai, those are sustainable and it's beautiful because they work, they smell great, and they're also plastic free. And I think that world is opening faster than we ever imagined. 5 years ago, when we started in Amai, there were hardly any of those stores, and nowadays there's so many. So in a matter of 3 years, the growth has been exponential. So basically demanding for it, using it yourself. I feel like when people use it, here is Steph, that is the managing director of Amai, and her hair is like, I don't even have to talk about Amai. She walks around next to me, I'm like, this is Amai. Like, it grows, and it's also a brand that, because we use much less chemicals than the majority, so you don't suffer from like hair loss, which is a huge thing, especially for women. During the pandemic, there are studies that said that women lost much more hair than ever before because of stress, and I think women and men, but the study was done on women. And our hair is a big signal of how our health is. And because they say what we eat is what we are, what we put on our skin and what we put in our hair is what we are too. So we use very little chemicals. We don't use sulfates. We don't use, fake fragrances. Everything is flowered. Everything is essential oils, therapeutic essential oils, coconut butter, shea butter, etc. I'm not gonna go into the list of ingredients, but it's all delicious stuff. And also, I just wanted to say this thing that you mentioned, and it's such an Amai thing, that we become chemists, right? We're like, yeah, I'm gonna try this, but because this cream is not so good, I'm gonna mix vitamin E with this cream that is amazing. And then I'm gonna put some lavender powder on, and then I'm just gonna mix it. And that's how Aislinn and I used to make creams when she made creams when she was pregnant for her belly, and she mixed and matched so many things. And then she taught me how to do it. So our first cream is basically the combination of all the things that we thought worked for our bellies. And now that cream has become one of the creams that women use, for anything, but especially if you have a big belly, because it really nourishes the skin when it's in that process of stretching and shrinking, and for your boobs. And so we celebrate all of our parts proudly, and bring the, las brujas mágicas Latinas that we all have inside,
Brujas buenas.
Oh yeah, but brujas were always good. They were just given a bad reputation.
Exactly.
History made them bad, but they were good.
Yeah, I'm a believer.
I'm aware.
So I think we're down to maybe about 2 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. And I think we've celebrated, the birth of your businesses. We've celebrated Latina women everywhere and, what they're doing in terms of entrepreneurship. And one of the things that I keep thinking about is how do we give these businesses longevity? Because there are so many obstacles for any business, right? But then you add on this extra complexity, of maybe poor funding to start, not enough understanding of where they can get the funding, having to compete with big brands, in the mainstream, et cetera. And so for those in the room, looking to start a business, maintain a business, or support women, entrepreneurs, give us in 30 seconds, your advice on how to help them.
I would say you don't have to know everything to start off. I knew nothing and I started off, and you learn along the way, and a lot of the things you'll only really understand it by doing them. So don't let ignorance, which is and I mean ignorance because it's not really ignorance, maybe unawareness, stop you from starting. And don't take no for an answer. We said yes to so many no's that we get given that eventually became yeses. So a no, it's only a no right now. It doesn't necessarily stays as a no for a long time. So just do it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think my message is really for the funders in the room is to fund Latina women. We are the most underfunded, 0.04% of women of color get funding, and we are the most entrepreneurial demographic in the US. So we have important contributions to make, and we need money to make them. So fund Latina women.
Well, thank
Agree.
you both. Kayla, Mariana, you're inspirational to us all. Everybody drink the agua fresca, order it, bring it to the work party, wash your hair with a mai, and take this message and carry it forward as best you can. Thank you.